einmal waren da überall Menschen, die Medien haben über mich berichtet.
All of a sudden there were people everywhere. The newspaper and radio were reporting about me and a hit-and-run accident. I made it look like I had been hit by a car. I didn't dare tell the truth. I knew if I told the truth I would be disowned by everyone. It was a very bad time for me.
Frau Zwiefka, im Jahr 2018 haben Sie die Diagnose Brustkrebs bekommen.
Ms. Zwiefka, you were diagnosed with breast cancer in 2018. Your mother died of breast cancer when you were 18 years old. The diagnosis was certainly a very drastic experience for you, but, as you told me in the run-up to this interview, also a very liberating one, because it made you decide to leave what you yourself described as a soap bubble in which you had lived for 20 years.
Exactly.
I would like to talk to you about all this and also about your near-death experience, which was of landmark significance for your life. First of all, please tell us what happened shortly before your mother's death.
Yes, with pleasure. We have to rewind a bit to 1998, when my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer twice. The first time I was 14. The second time I was 17. The cancer had progressed so far that the bones were eaten away by metastases. I wasn't told that, though. I have 2 older siblings, and they never really talked to me about that. I had a very, very close and intimate connection with my mother. I was not planned at all. I was the baby of the family. As a result, I had a difficult relationship with my father and a very good one with my mother. We were always together. We were also in treatment. She was already ill with asthma before. When the breast cancer came, my inner world collapsed. I had to watch her throwing up during the chemotherapy, her hair falling out, the pain she was in, and how her body was wasting away. I used to be in my dream world and was very comfortable with it. I was more of a withdrawn child, very imaginative and always writing fantasy stories. At the end of 1998, I had a dream that my mother was going to die. I knew that this dream would come true. Then I decided for myself in my youthful recklessness, I was 17 at the time, if my mother dies, I don't want to be here anymore either. Then came January the 25th, 1999. It was 7 a.m., bitterly cold and dark. I set out to go to my internship. It was just a short walk. Then I lay down on a road and saw that a car was coming from above, and I let the car run over me. I saw that the driver stopped on the right side and opened the window. He saw me lying there and drove on. I tried to get up and didn't really know what had I done. What had happened in the first place? Was this a dream or reality? I couldn't get up because my left leg was upside down. Then I slumped over again, but I didn't want to suffer the pain I was already in again. So I waved my arms so that I wouldn't get run over again. I can't tell you how long it took them to find me.
You couldn't move away from this place either?
No, my leg was upside down and I couldn't move. At some point, someone I knew came along. He talked to me and called 911 for the ambulance. The police also came. I woke up briefly in the hospital. I kept dozing off. I even saw that I had an open fracture. In the ambulance, I was asked what my name was. I remembered that. They asked me how many fingers there were. I remembered that too. They also asked absurd questions like what had happened and whether I had remembered the license plate number. Of course I couldn't remember. In the hospital I saw my father was standing behind a pane of glass. I saw him talking to the doctors.
This was an intensive care unit?
Yes, exactly. There was a difficult operation. They told him that they didn't know how it would turn out. I said a quick goodbye to him, and then they took me to the operating room. They prepped me for surgery. I had to count backwards until I was gone. I remember very clearly that everything was inky black. The angle I'm looking at you now, at some point, I saw a white light from the very back. I went further and further into this white light. Then angels came towards me. They said to me that it was still far from my time to go, and that my path here was not over. I saw my body in the operating room on the couch, being operated on. I saw my open wounds. Everything that can be broken on the left side, from the hip down to the foot, was broken.
Did you watch for an extended period, or was it more of a brief moment?
It was a brief moment, but I also saw that in the operating room there were quite a few angels standing around me, telling me, "It's not time for a long while yet." I said, "I know my mother is going to die and I don't want to stay here anymore. I want to go." I felt so comfortable, this warmth that radiated from outside, this light. I can't even describe it. It was so beautiful. I felt so comfortable.
The pain was no longer there?
The pain was not there at all. I didn't feel it at all, nothing. I begged and pleaded with the angels. "I want to stay here. I don't want to go back." I then said I was making a deal with the angels. That was stupid, but I really said it. I said, "I'm sacrificing my life for my mother's life. My mother gets to stay alive, and I'm leaving." The angels just said to me, "Kendra, you have a lot to do here. You will live a long life." At some point, I woke up. Then I asked the nurse what time it was. I looked down at myself, and the whole of my left side was wrapped up. I was elevated with the leg up. Everything was bandaged. The nurse said, "It's 7 in the morning." Then I said to her, "I have to get up now. I have to go to my internship."
You didn't yet realize what was going on?
Not consciously at all. Then I found out that I had been asleep for over 24 hours, that I was totally out of it, and that I didn't know what was going on at all. I remember the first time my father came and asked what had happened. The police were also there, and there were so many people around me. I didn't know that before. I have to say, today I'm totally ashamed of it, but it felt incredibly good. I hardly had anyone to look after me before. All of a sudden there were people everywhere. The newspaper and radio were reporting on me and a hit-and-run accident. I made it look like I had been hit by a car. I didn't dare tell the truth. I knew if I told the truth I would be disowned by everyone. It was a very bad time for me. I did a lot of sports before that. I started doing gymnastics when I was 3. That made my bones heal incredibly fast. I had to learn to walk again. I had to learn everything all over again. My mother was not allowed to know anything about this accident. I can call it a suicide attempt today. because she herself was in such a bad way. She was in the university hospital and was fighting for her life. She was not to know anything about it until I was out of the woods. My sister, however, did blab. I only knew that I saw very little of her because she was always in the university hospital. It was a terrible time because I couldn't see her at all. I was in the hospital for 6 weeks, and then I went to the rehabilitation clinic. There I was in a wheelchair and had to learn to walk again from the wheelchair. I had to roll my foot again. I had broken everything: the sacrum, the heel bone, the back of the lower leg. It was all broken. At the time, high-sole buffaloes were in fashion. If I hadn't had those on, my foot wouldn't have been salvageable. These shoes saved my foot. What is left of it, however, are 3 almost numb toes. I can't cut my own toenails, it's very difficult. Countless scars are left. I have more than 30 scars on my left leg, and on my right leg I still have a small imprint of the tyre that ran me over. Those were terrible moments.
Did you evaluate your suicide attempt differently after the near-death experience?
Yes. I thought that if I told the truth, I would be disowned by everyone. I would no longer have a family. So I would have to keep up this facade. In some way, I had to live this life and deal with this lie, so that I could somehow continue to live. For me, there wasn't this way out of simply telling the truth. To this day, I can't say why that was. I was so incredibly scared that I would have no family or friends after that. I was so ashamed. I would have loved to contact the driver in the accident and tell him how sorry I was for everything, but I just didn't dare.
Were they able to locate the driver?
No, not to this day.
Did you at any point also have a feeling about how the driver was faring?
Yes, quite often. In recent years, when I came to spirituality and let everything sink in and processed it in the first place, I started to think about him. But that was only possible with help. I would never have thought of it on my own.
I would like to go back to the beginning of your near-death experience. So you never fell into unconsciousness? The experience continued immediately after you received the anesthesia?
I felt an incredible warmth emanating from the angels, and this warm and brightly shining light. But what you hear about angels, how they are often described, with long hair or with wings, was not what I observed. These were instead light figures, I would say, like in a fantasy film, but not as one often reads or hears nowadays.
I know it's always a little difficult with words, but can you describe your sensations during the near-death experience in a little more detail?
Yes. It was with a lot of love, a lot of security, trust, I would also say, but also this deep awareness that everything was good and that everything will also be good. They gave me an incredibly warm feeling.
You mention warmth. What sensations was that associated with? Love? Security?
Yes, exactly. They said that I have a great task ahead of me. Of course, they didn't tell me what it was. With this confidence, I was also able to find my way back.
So you also experienced confidence that it was absolutely right and important to continue living?
Yes, totally. I noticed that the blockages that I had and the deep fear dissolved.
After this experience, could you have imagined committing suicide again at any point?
No, absolutely not. I knew there was no way I was going to do it again. I had this deep confidence that everything was going to be okay. I didn't know why, though. I knew my mother was going to die after all. But I knew through the fact that the angels told me I had a great task here on earth, that I already had this deep, deep trust in myself at that time.
Let's go back to your mother for a moment. How did things progress with her? You had a very close relationship with her. Did you continue to experience moments of closeness after your mother's death?
Yes, I did. My mother passed away on April the 10th, 1999. On April the 8th, she called me over and said to me, "Kendra, I have something to tell you." That moment she was already in bed with morphine patches, and I knew what she was going to say. She said to me, "Kendra, I'm going to die." I just said to her, "Mum, I know you're going to die. I already know." 2 days later, she died. Like in the movie, I was alone at her funeral. True, there were many people there. My mother had a very large circle of acquaintances, and so did my father. The church was packed to the brim, and outside too. I know to this day that I was already being carried there by her. Otherwise, I would not have been able to go through this funeral at all. I stood there with my crutches. I didn't have time to mourn properly, I can say today, and neither did my family. There was hardly any talk about death. I could only really mourn much later, when I could walk again. She came to me in a dream in late 1999 and said to me, "Kendra, I know how bad 1999 was for you. Not only did I lose my mother, but I also lost my grandfather that year." She said, "I'm sending you a guardian angel." I knew that guardian angel would come. Exactly 1 month later, I met my husband, to whom I have now been married for 15 years. We've been a couple for 22 years. I know that she sent him. That's why I'm so deeply grateful. And also that I listened to the angels at that time and said, "Okay, I'll give it another chance. There is something great waiting for me here. Among other things, this is my husband."
Have you been able to talk about your near-death experience with other people?
Yes, but that took almost 20 years, not before 2018.
So you never talked to anyone about it at all before that?
No.
What triggered it at that point?
Ja, 2018 war es so, dass ich unter der Dusche stand und dass ich wirklich
In 2018, I was in the shower and discovered a ping-pong ball-sized lump under my right armpit.
Tischtennisball großen Knubbel entdeckt. Und
I knew immediately what it was. After all, I was a perfect actress. I lied for almost 20 years. I had to somehow maintain this facade for 20 years, thinking, "Oh, come on, there's nothing there. You've been doing too much sport again." But I went to the doctor immediately the next day and didn't sleep that night either. I went and got my husband and asked him, "Can you go see what's there?" And he also said, "Yes, there is something." I went to the gynecologist the next day. He examined me, saw something on the ultrasound and said, "Yes, there's something there." He told me to get a mammogram right away. It only took 2 days for me to get an appointment. Nowadays, I know that it's so lucky that there are no coincidences. The moment I got that diagnosis of breast cancer, I was guided. That's when I realized that Mum was there, and a huge guardian angel that was with me. that was with me all the time, also with my mum.
Und ich weiß noch, als ich die Diagnose bekam, als es bei der Mammographie war.
When I went for a mammogram and a malignant tumour was diagnosed, it was like a déjà vu. The door opened and the doctor who came in looked like my mother. She had a white pearl necklace on, just like my mother did back then, and she had short blonde hair. The funny thing is, the doctor had the same maiden name as my mother. I just remembered that now that I'm sitting here with you. Every time I have a mammogram, I have to have a mammogram every 6 months. This doctor is there. It's always just this doctor. It's madness, it's unbelievable. And she opened up to me about breast cancer, a malignant tumour that grows very quickly. She said, "We have to respond immediately." I didn't even know what to do, what was back and what was front. I had to get out. I didn't know where the nearest park was, but I really needed to get out into the countryside. I called my husband first, couldn't say anything. He knew right away. Then I called my dad, saying, "Dad, it's Kendra. I have breast cancer." And I completely broke down. My dad immediately woke me up and said, "Kendra, it's been almost 20 years since your mum had it. Medicine is ready today, and we can do this together." I had had a very difficult relationship with my father over the last few years before that, because I was always afraid of what he would discover. Every time we called, every time we visited, or when we were there with the kids, we had very little contact. I was so afraid that I would be exposed. That's why I went through my life so timid. I did everything I was told. I didn't express my own opinion at all. I was very quiet. I was such a quiet little grey mouse, and I kind of lived. Of course, I have a great family, a wonderful husband, 2 great kids, but I didn't feel whole at all during that time. I wasn't really me at all.
In the background was this great theme that wanted to be lived.
Yes, exactly. Then, when this diagnosis of breast cancer came in 2018, I made the whole thing public. I was in network marketing at the time, so I already had followers on Facebook and on Instagram. I knew exactly when this diagnosis of breast cancer came, when the mammogram confirmed it to me, I absolutely have to go and live that day to protect and warn other women how important it is to check yourself, to have body awareness, and above all to go to the gynecologist for preventive care. I didn't know what it was, who was guiding me. Today I know it was my mother and my guardian angel. At that time I didn't know that because I had no contact with the spiritual world at all, except for the near-death experience, but I repressed that, or put it in a drawer so that no one would know. Then I might have been committed. If I had said that I had seen angels and that I was lying there, they would have immediately said, "Okay, all right, she's going to a mental hospital." I really didn't want that. At some point, one of my customers, Cornelia, read my article. She wrote me a WhatsApp. "Kendra, maybe I can help you." I knew there was a lot of truth in those words. 2 days later, we spoke on the phone. She just asked me, "Kendra, are you open to new things?" "Yes, I'm open to anything, no problem." I had a deep trust in her. She was my soul path companion. She then also asked, "What happened in your life? Tell me about it." I told her that I laid down on the road that time. I immediately didn't lie. I said for the first time that it wasn't an accident. It was a suicide attempt. That very moment, something happened that made me feel so infinitely free, as if a backpack was taken off my shoulders, filled with 1,000 stones so that I couldn't walk at all. I knew that this time would run out if I didn't finally look right now, finally feel it, if I didn't finally tell the truth now. That's what I did with her. She said, "Kendra, there are moments in life, whether it's a suicide attempt, a bereavement, a death or whatever, where the soul is so deeply wounded that soul parts go out of your body and you can't get them back unless you do some kind of ritual, a soul journey." And she did that with me. From there, I knew we were being guided. The funny thing is, we live many miles apart, but found out that her mother and my mother knew each other. Her mother was a midwife and probably delivered my mother. They also grew up together in the same town. That bond was so palpable, that was incredibly valuable. I know that I'm only sitting here today because of Connie. Cornelia gave me back my life, this deep feeling that I have found myself again. At some point I dared to take the step of telling the truth to my husband, and after many, many moments to my family. I lied for almost 20 years because I was so afraid of what would happen. I made it public in 2020, told the truth and went out with it to protect other people, or also to say, it doesn't matter what you did, even if you have a suicide attempt behind you, but talk to someone about it. It eats you up otherwise. Fears and worry eat you up. I know for a fact that this breast cancer diagnosis had to come for me to finally wake up. I was on the brink. If I didn't finally come clean now, that would have been it. No one would have been able to save me. Then I wouldn't be here anymore.
How did you go on then with the diagnosis? How did you feel physically?
I was doing very well. Every time I went to the hospital, I had put on a kind of protective cloak with my soul path companion Cornelia, so that the chemotherapy worked where it should, on the chest, and all the other cells remained healthy. I was very busy with meditation and with the spiritual world. I also had an incredible amount of time. Before, I never had so much time for myself. I was always a wife and mother, had to do the job somehow, and was on the road 24/7 non-stop. I was really forced to rest. As a result, I was very well physically, also because I did an incredible amount of sports before. I ate healthily, was on the move all day. Nowadays, I know that my body was prepared for this diagnosis, that I could go through chemotherapy so well. I would like to tell you about the experience when I first met my doctor. The doctor was and is a living angel. I'd never experienced a person like that before. Usually it is like this. You come in, are seated, 2-3 minutes, bang, door closed, out. With him it was like this. We were able to sit down, my husband was there, and when I opened the door, the first thing he did was to take me in his arms, stroke my cheek and say to me, "We can do this together." That was like a balm to my soul. I still get goosebumps and tears in my eyes when I think of that moment, because he too made a huge difference and walked this path with me. I had hardly any side effects. He also said to me, "Do me a favor, don't Google the word cancer. Then you can go right ahead and order a tombstone." I listened to that. I didn't Google it. He said to me, I can tell you exactly everything about what side effects you might have, but it doesn't have to be that way. Every person is unique, and every body reacts differently. That's why I went through chemotherapy treatments with so much love, and I had my community around me. Every time I went into chemotherapy, I would say beforehand, can you guys be there for me? Can you guys think about me? Can you give me positive energy? And send, above all, lots of love, lots of healing. And that's what they did. And it made such an incredible difference that I can only wish that for every person who is in a situation like that, who is going into chemotherapy, that they really go in with a lot of energy from their friends, from the outside, from the people who are there for them. I was always just focused on the positive. I knew every chemotherapy session is a piece of healing. Of course, there are many people who say they don't need chemotherapy at all. But for me, it was the right way, so that I could connect the medical side with the spiritual side and create this path. I made a visualization and said, in October, I don't want to feel this tumor anymore. It should be gone then. And exactly on October the 20th, it was no longer tangible, no longer palpable.
How are you today?
Super. I really feel fantastic. I have hardly any after effects. I'm still on anti-hormone therapy. I have to take pills every day. But even these pills don't do anything to me. I'm now being switched to other tablets. But even then I think to myself, okay, I should have this exact experience so that I can encourage others, so that I can be a light for others, and that such a diagnosis, it doesn't have to be cancer, any other diagnosis, can be a second chance for life.
You also see encouraging people as your mission in life.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I'm here for. I know that these days too.
This then also fits well with your near-death experience, the knowledge that there is a task.
Yes, absolutely. Because I get so many messages through the interviews that I've already done, or the podcast interviews that I've given. So many people have been able to look behind that facade once. Cancer is not evil. It doesn't mean us any harm. That's what I've learned these days too. That you should listen to yourself, to your soul. I find this saying so beautiful, that the soul says to the body, "Body, do something. It doesn't listen to me. I can do whatever I want." That's where the hammer has to come in, and that's where it has to be hit once now so that it finally wakes up. That's how it is. When we learn to finally look and feel, and look very, very deeply, no matter how painful it is, and all that happens, in the end, there is healing in the truth. I know that 1,000% these days.
I think those were very good concluding words. Ms. Zwiefka, all the best, and thank you very much for the interview.
It's a pleasure.